I told you, it was an accident, Henry exclaimed, gripping a half-full soda can like a boxing glove. He was a wiry figure, all sharp angles and energy. The last thing I wanted was to blow up your hairdryer. Maya rolled her eyes, her arms folded defiantly. Right, and I'm sure you regularly set off fire alarms just for fun. Next time, try not to burn my things while you're at it. Their bickering cut through Laelani's growing panic, momentarily distracting her. They're a disaster waiting to happen, she said, a soft smile creeping onto her face as she caught Desmond's eye, thankful for the humor amidst the chaos. Can't we give them a moment alone? Desmond chuckled, shaking his head. It's like a circus act waiting to unfold. But humor aside, we need to figure this out. The longer we stay, the worse it'll get. Right, Laelani said softly, brushing her hair back as her heart clenched. You're right. I'll talk to Dominic tonight. I need answers. Determination lightened her voice as she stepped a fraction closer to him, an invitation not just to the man she was drawn to, but to their shared uncertainty. Desmond reached out, brushing the back of his fingers along her arm, igniting an electric sensation that reverberated deep within her. Whatever happens, I'm with you, he promised, and for a brief moment, amidst the chaos, there was nothing but clarity, their bond threading through the decay and danger. Together, she whispered, a silent vow as their gazes locked, the heat igniting between them, each second stretching into an eternity. Outside, the discord rose to a fever pitch, clashing within the backdrop, but here, with him, everything made sense, her rebellious heart, their unexpected connection, and a world threatening to tear them apart. Laelani took a deep breath, realizing that together they would face whatever lay ahead. Scene 43. Out of shadows. As the dawn broke reluctantly over the urban sprawl, an ethereal calm hung in the air, thick with unspoken tensions. Laelani Sinclair stood in the kitchen of her bright penthouse, preparing breakfast, a routine masquerade she clung to in hopes of finding peace amid the chaos. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee lingered, curling around her like an embrace she desperately needed. Yet each slice of avocado felt heavier, each clink of dishware more significant, as anxiety twisted inside her like a coiled snake. She wasn't just making breakfast. She was navigating the labyrinth of her emotions, caught between the familiarity of her luxurious life and the enticing uncertainty that Desmond Carver represented. From behind, Desmond's presence shifted the atmosphere, electric and immediate. He strode into the sun-kissed kitchen, where the soft light caressed the angles of his face. An unguarded look crossed Laelani's features, one of longing and confusion. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a playful smirk tugging at his lips. Hiding again? Laelani turned from the counter, her heart thrumming like a trapped bird. Not hiding, just pursuing domestic bliss, she retorted, feigning lightness. The words were a veil. Beneath them lay a churning storm of doubt. He approached, ambling as if the world could wait, but every moment felt like an eternity spent suspended in indecision. Domestic bliss, huh? Seems a bit stale. His laughter danced in the air, teasing yet soft, as if despairing over their shared reality. There's nothing stale about it, she shot back playfully, yet her cheeks warmed under his gaze, a mix of challenge and something deeper that urged her forward. Some of us have responsibilities. Responsibility? He stepped closer, the shadows deepening around them. Is that what you call this gilded cage? His voice dipped to a whisper, spinning her tightly wound heart wild. Laelani swayed slightly, aware of the vulnerability she exposed with each slow movement. It's not a cage, she argued, but the certainty was a brittle wall crumbling under his scrutiny. His proximity made everything feel real. The threat loomed larger outside their quaint sanctuary. The kitchen felt smaller, the space between them charged. Without thinking, Laelani reached out to steady herself against the counter, her fingers brushing the cool granite as if it could ground her. Desmond cocked his head, eyes dancing over her face, searching. What if you broke free? When she met his gaze, the question unraveled her thoughts. Wild, frenzied images surged forward, laughter, warmth, passion, life, without the chains of expectation. What are you saying? He hesitated, and in that moment, the world outside their bubble fell silent. I'm saying it's not too late. His voice dropped, intensity weaving through the air. He stepped even closer until the heat of him enveloped her, and the scent of sandalwood wrapped around her senses like a long-lost melody. Laelani's breath hitched. There are consequences. Consequences be damned. His fervor ignited a flame inside her, embers of desires long buried flickering with fervent life. Let me show you what it means to really live, Ellie. Desmond's gaze held hers, carving away at all pretenses, exposing the raw, beating heart of her soul. Ellie. The way he said it pulled at her. It was a name filled with unspoken promises and unshed tears. You want freedom? She blurted, the question heavy with their shared weight of unknowing. An unspoken conversation buzzed between them, bodies poised on the precipice of decision. He bridged the space, the urgency in his movements making Laelani's heart race as he tangled his fingers in her hair, drawing her closer. The warmth of their bodies melded, and her mind was a chorus of doubts and blushing fervor, drowning in the electric pull between them. She felt the brush of his lips, tentative at first, like the promise of a summer rain before the storm. It deepened, intoxicating and liberating, as if time folded in on itself, everything they were, everything they dreamed fluttering away, leaving only this moment, this kiss. It ignited a wild longing between them, passion intertwining with danger. As their lips moved in a fervent dance, the world outside faded, the chaos of her life culminating into this singular breath, this heartbeat where everything felt halted, yet trajectory changed. With a gentle yet insistent push, he pulled away, breathless. We can't just stay here, Laelani. The shadows are closing in. He searched her face, searching for answers, for a flicker of resolve. In that moment, as reality rushed back, swirling around them with the promise of danger and betrayal, she whispered, "Then let's face them together." Scene 44, Resting Heartbeats. The flickering candlelight cast soft shadows against the polished walls of the small hotel room, transforming the space into a sanctuary amid the chaos of their lives. Outside, the distant sounds of the city mingled with the rhythmic pulse of the ocean waves. Laelani leaned against the window frame, arms crossed, her reflection mingling with the darkness beyond. "Why did you turn your phone off?" Desmond asked, his voice low, tinged with a hint of concern as he stood a few steps back, hands shoved into the pockets of his tailored pants. She turned her gaze toward him, the lines of worry etched on her brow deepening. It felt safer this way. I needed a moment of stillness, Desmond. Out there, it feels like we're always running. He stepped closer, his measured pace silent against the carpet. A tightness gripped his jaw as he fought against the worry coiling in his stomach. But what if I'd needed you? Laelani uncrossed her arms, letting her fingers trace along the cool surface of the windowsill. You'd find a way to reach me, just like you always do. She turned, catching his gaze, and the unspoken connection sparked in the air between them like static electricity. Always? He echoed, tilting his head slightly, scanning her face for traces of the truth. You make it sound like it's a foregone conclusion. In the charged silence that stretched between them, the weight of their shared secrets loomed large. Just weeks ago, her heart had belonged to another, but now it was wrapped in the complexities of this clandestine affair, which flickered like the flame between them, intense yet perilous. Feelings change, she murmured. Circumstances do too. Desmond approached her, their proximity forcing attention both intoxicating and dangerous. You're married, Laelani. We're almost criminals. He leaned against the window frame beside her, and for a moment they both watched the chaos of the street below, the silhouettes of night passing by. His voice dropped to nearly a whisper. Do you realize how many lines we've crossed to be here? Don't pretend it doesn't scare you. The vulnerability in his question settled heavily in the room, seeping into the air, mingling with their unsteady breaths. And yet here we are, she said, matching his tone, her voice almost a challenge. What does that say about us? It says we should be careful, he replied, a flicker of frustration igniting in his tone. I don't want this to end in a bust, or worse. I can't lose you. At that, Laelani turned fully to him, her features alight with indignation. You think this is easy for me? Every time I look at you, every laugh we share, it pulls me away from the life I've known. Do you think I'll just walk away when it gets tough? No one told me falling for you would feel like this. Desmond's eyes softened, the sharp lines of his anger dissolving into something more profound. Then tell me, what are we going to do? You can't keep living in that world, pretending nothing is happening. Don't you ever think about the consequences? As his question lingered, she stepped back, putting space between them. The emotional weight threatened to drown her. Yet beneath the surface, a flicker of defiant resolve ignited. "I could say the same to you. You're working against my husband, a man you've never even met yet," she pointed out, hands on her hips, posture fierce. "What do you expect me to do? Sit back and watch while you risk everything." The fire in her tone faltered only slightly. Vulnerability edged its way back in. Desmond pinched his brows together, a flash of anger making him momentarily hard to read. "For better or worse," he stated, his voice steady. "What you feel may complicate things, but at least it's honest. What is it you want, Laelani? Because I can't keep chasing shadows." In that moment of silence charged with 1,000 unspoken words, Laelani stepped closer again. The fear that had been simmering inside her now transformed into a quiet strength. "Perhaps what I want is right in front of me," she whispered, their faces inches apart, the connection sparking from instinct and chaos. The distant sound of a car horn from the street below reminded them both of their reality. A long moment passed, where breaths intertwined like hesitant dancers in the twilight. Desmond's response was barely a whisper. "Then let's make it count." They moved in unison as they drew closer, worlds colliding in a shared heartbeat that pulsed between them, igniting the promise of what could be under an ever-looming storm. What lay ahead remained uncertain, but in that fleeting moment, all they could do was lean into the undeniable, tender truth of their shared pulse. Scene 45, Revealing Intentions. As night unfurled its velvety cloak over the sprawling garden of Laelani Sinclair's immaculate estate, an unsettling tension hung in the air like the fragrance of jasmine, sweet yet disquieting. The soft rustle of leaves danced faintly with the warm breeze, but inside the spacious drawing room, emotions swirled in a tempest. Laelani stood by the grand fireplace, shadows flickering across her delicate features. Her heart raced, each beat an echo of her mounting anxieties. She absent-mindedly traced her fingers over the engraved mantle, lost in thought, when Desmond Carver swept into her peripheral vision, a calming presence amid the chaos, yet charged with an undercurrent of unspoken tension. "Are you sure this is wise?" Desmond's voice was low, a blend of concern and fierce determination, his brow furrowed in a way that made his sharp features soften momentarily. Laelani turned towards him, brushing her long curls behind her ear to reveal the intensity in her eyes. "We need answers, Desmond. I can't keep living behind this illusion." Her voice trembled slightly as she gestured to the velvet drapes, the theater curtains of their lives tainted by deceit. Just then, the gilded door creaked open, allowing a trio of unexpected visitors to sweep in like a whirlwind. Among them was Darius, Laelani's husband, tall and imposing, his presence expanding within the room like a storm cloud. He was flanked by his steadfast Lieutenant Marcus, whose stoic demeanor contrasted sharply with the animated energy of Mia, their childhood friend turned ally, her eyes sparkling with intrigue. "Didn't mean to crash your intimate soirée," Darius said, his tone dripping with sarcasm as a predatory grin curled at the corners of his mouth. He scanned the room, resting his gaze on Laelani and Desmond with an air of casual menace. Desmond clenched his jaw, eyes narrowing. "What do you want, Darius?" There was a tangible weight in his voice, an unyielding edge underscoring the urgency of the moment. Before Darius could respond, Mia chimed in, hands on her hips, her vibrant personality seeming almost out of place in the simmering tension. "We're just here for a little chat, a family reunion of sorts. Right, Darius?" Her smile was warm yet concealing, as if she were the host in a party she deliberately crashed. "Let's skip to the chase, shall we?" Darius interjected, his voice cutting through the atmosphere like a knife. "I hear there are some secrets being whispered in corners, and it's high time they saw the light. Don't you agree, Laelani?" Laelani swallowed hard, feeling as if the walls were closing in. "Secrets could destroy everything, Darius." Her voice, soft yet defiant, held an underlying plea, one that wrestled with a deep-seated yearning for freedom amidst entrapment. With a challenging glint in his eyes, Darius stepped closer. "Perhaps it's time for a reckoning," he said, fixing his gaze on Desmond. "You've become too familiar with my wife. It's time to decide where your loyalties lie." Desmond stepped forward, matching his intensity. "Loyalty is a currency I don't trade in lightly, Darius. I'm not here for your games." Amid this storm of rising tempers, Mia, ever the mediator, interjected with a teasing laugh that ricocheted off the stark walls of tension. "Oh, isn't this fun? A domestic drama unfolding like a soap opera. Maybe I should take notes for a screenplay." Darius shot her an irritated glance, but she shrugged playfully, clearly relishing the chaos. "Seriously, we could use a little comedy in all this drama." The tension thickened around them as memories shifted uneasily under the weight of fresh grievances. Darius's eyes darkened, his gaze shifting to Laelani, who stood equally defiant yet vulnerable. "You think you've outgrown me? You think this charming little driver can give you what I cannot?" Laelani inhaled sharply, each word igniting a spark of rebellion. "What you can't give me is what I truly want, a life I choose, not one you dictate." At that moment, the air crackled with possibilities, the stark dichotomy of desire and duty mirrored in the expressions of everyone present. "Choose wisely, beautiful," Darius whispered, a blend of warning and promise lacing his words. But Laelani and Desmond shared a fleeting glance, a silent agreement forming between them, igniting a spark of determination. Underneath the veneer of threats lay something unexpected, a flicker of understanding and desire that bound them closer amidst the chaos threatening to unravel their lives. They were not just figures in a game. They were individuals choosing to fight for their identities, their passions, their very survival. And as the night stretched on, the lines between alliances began to blur, leaving them all to wonder where the truth lay beneath the jagged surface, and who among them might just prevail. Scene 46. In Love's Grip. Laelani stood close to the expansive window of her art-filled studio, the moonlight spilling into the room like liquid silver. The shadows played tricks along the walls, teasing her with memories of a life bound by silk ties and suffocating expectations. She turned her gaze toward Desmond, who leaned casually against the doorway, the night's quiet pressing in around them. "Do you think love can exist in a place like this?" Laelani asked, her voice barely above a whisper, yet heavy with the weight of questions unsaid. Desmond's eyes held hers, fierce yet magnetic. Love has a way of flourishing in darkness. It doesn't ask for permission. His brow furrowed slightly, the intensity in his gaze growing. He pushed himself away from the doorframe, stepping closer, each footfall echoing the unrest swirling between them. Laelani swallowed, a sensation of anticipation curling in her stomach. Knowing the peril over her shoulder, her husband, the looming shadows of danger that surrounded them, she felt the heat radiating from Desmond's presence. He was a storm she had willingly walked into, but now, standing within reach, she wondered if she had the strength to ride the wave. Desmond paused, the air thick with tension. "What are you afraid of?" His voice was low, carrying an undeniable edge. She took a breath, the scent of turpentine and linseed oil filling her lungs. "Everything. Consequences. Choices. I could lose everything I've built." "What if everything you've built isn't worth keeping?" Desmond stepped closer, their breaths now mingling in the space that separated them. The world outside faded until only the two of them remained, encased in something infinitely more fragile than glass. "I don't know," Laelani admitted, her voice trembling. The vulnerability in her words reflected the tumult within. She could feel the fine line between fear and desire beginning to blur, each pulse of her heartbeat a reflection of her chaotic mind. Desmond reached out, brushing a stray curl behind her ear with a tenderness that ignited her senses. The simple act felt colossal, revealing every facet of his yearning and her own unspoken longing. A silence settled between them, thick and electric. In that moment, Laelani took another breath, the cool air tinged with the lingering warmth of Desmond's touch. "Sometimes I think, sometimes I feel." The words slipped through unpolished lips, each phrase more difficult than the last. Before she could finish, Desmond stepped into that silence again, this time with a fierceness that ignited the room. "You feel this too, Laelani. You know what we are." There it was, the admission hung between them, tinged with urgency and danger. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, the ground beneath her crumbling with every heartbeat. "I can't," she said, shaking her head softly, though her heart screamed otherwise. Desmond was a wild wind she couldn't cage, a tempest she could not resist. "Can't or won't?" Desmond's voice dropped, laced with challenge. A tremor of defiance coursed through her. "What if it shatters everything?" Desmond stepped even closer, hands now firmly resting on her waist. his touch emitting both heat and restraint. Maybe it will, or maybe it's exactly what you need. His intensity was palpable, a magnetic force. In that fleeting moment, her resolve crumbled under the weight of his gaze, the undeniable pull of their fates intertwining. Then their lips met, a collision as sweet as it was tumultuous. It was a kiss that spoke of stolen nights, of paints mixing on canvas, colors merging into something new and beautiful. She tasted the fervor of 1,000 unfulfilled dreams, fears dissolving in the heat that flared between them. The world outside faded into insignificance, the looming shadows of her husband, life's confines, all eclipsed by the deep, reckless plunge she was taking into Desmond's embrace. Every gentle sigh, every shiver of her skin against his, a declaration of war against all that bound and chained her. They pulled back slightly, breathless, foreheads touching, hearts racing. "All I know is I want this," Desmond murmured, his voice a low rumble, almost reverent. "Do you?" Laelani whispered back, uncertainty swimming in her gaze. Desmond captured her chin, tilting her face toward him, a silent promise glimmering in his eyes. "With you, I'd run anywhere." But deep within her chest, the weight of her choices settled like an anchor, a stark reminder that love couldn't exist in a vacuum. She'd have to decide soon, or risk losing everything she had ever known. Scene 47, Entangled Fates. The late afternoon sun filtered through the crackling leaves of the oak tree in the park, casting golden shards onto the weathered wooden bench where Laelani Sinclair sat, paintbrush poised over her watercolor palette. The urban cacophony hummed around her, a blend of laughter, distant traffic, and the rustling of encounters. Yet she was cocooned in her world, the air saturated with the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers. Laelani dipped her brush into the cerulean blue, hesitating for just a heartbeat before glancing toward the path that led to her. With every passing moment, the sensation of waiting tightened around her heart. She was lost in the depths of her emotion, the canvas before her both a sanctuary and a prison. She aimed to capture the fleeting beauty of the park, but it was Desmond's face she longed to embody in each brushstroke. A gust of wind ruffled her hair as she heard familiar footsteps. Desmond Carver strolled into view, his silhouette sharp against the light. Instantly, her breath hitched. The way his eyes lit up upon seeing her drew a soft smile from her lips, and just like that, the world around her faded. He joined her bench, the warmth of his presence both electric and dangerously comforting. "Are you painting today or creating a secret map to treasure?" Desmond leaned closer, a teasing lilt in his voice, bringing with him the scent of fresh rain and something undeniably magnetic. "No treasure here, just the burdens of a too quiet mind," she replied, her tone light yet layered with the weight of what was unspoken. He chuckled softly, a rich sound that reverberated like a heartbeat. "You should know by now that your burdens have a knack for attracting mischief." Their eyes locked in a moment thick with yearning. The tension between them was palpable, crackling in the air like static before a storm. As she turned back to her palette, he leaned against the bench, arms crossed. The muscles in his forearms tensed, a subtle clench, a sign of their entwined fates brewing simmering storms. "What is it you're really painting, Laelani? It looks beautiful, but I sense it's hiding something deeper." She paused, brush hovering over the canvas, considering his words. "I paint what I feel, Desmond. Would you believe me if I told you it's about freedom? Or would you think I'm just avoiding the truth?" "Maybe I'm more interested in the truth," he replied, his voice low, intensifying the air around them. The sun glinted off his dark curls, framing his face in a halo that made her heart race. "Then look closely," she whispered, her breath barely above a sigh, "and you will see the shadows." Just then a group of children darted past, laughter mingling with the rustling leaves, pulling them from their moment. Laelani turned her head slightly, and as she did, her gaze caught something in the distance, a figure lurking beneath the shade of another tree. A chill rippled through her. "Desmond," she started, her voice barely a thread. But he had already shifted his focus to where she couldn't help but stare. The figure melted into the shadows, but all the while, her pulse quickened with the threat it symbolized. "Just my imagination." He dismissed it with a gentle wave of his hand, but could see the tremor in her fingers as she mixed her colors. "More on your mind than just the canvas, I see. Perhaps the world is painted in shades more sinister than I care to capture?" she replied, resolute yet faltering. And maybe. She hesitated at the crossroads of her longing, pressing her lips together, feeling the weight of her marriage and the intimacy formed with Desmond. Maybe I don't know how to align what I want with what I should. Desmond's gaze remained locked onto her, the intensity of it unraveling her resolve. We can be forthright with each other, Laelani. That's the bond we've forged. Is it not? His words hung between them, dripping with subtext, pulsating with the truth neither of them could ignore. A distant siren sliced through the park's ambience. She flinched, but Desmond's hand fell gently on hers, grounding her in both the present and the precariousness of their situation. "What if you're hiding?" he began, but swallowed hard, catching himself. "What if I am?" she replied, emboldened. But as she squeezed his hand, his grip tightened as if to say, "Whatever our fates are, we will face them together." Laughter erupted from the children again, but Laelani felt a pulse of danger lurking beneath the surface of even their joy. The painting, now a mere echo of their growing connection, took on all the colors of their uncertainty, and they would have to confront whatever awaited next. "Make sure to save room for the red." Desmond paused, searching her eyes, "for the danger will draw." She smiled knowingly, feeling the raw threads of fate entwining them tighter. For the passion, too. As she dipped her brush back into the paint, she thought fleetingly how she'd never been more terrified or more alive. Scene 48. Paths diverge. Laelani Sinclair stood in the kitchen, the lingering aroma of freshly brewed coffee swirling around her like a warm embrace, yet it did little to dissolve the icy tension coiling within her chest. The narrow sliver of morning light that pierced through the curtain danced upon the polished surface of her kitchen table, illuminating the scattered remnants of untouched breakfast croissants and butter, now congealed into a scene of neglect. The sunlight felt mockingly cheerful, at odds with the turmoil brewing inside. The sounds of the city hummed just beyond her window, a symphony of life that felt both distant and oppressive. Each honk of a horn or shout of excitement reminded her that the world outside was moving briskly, while she hovered at a crossroads, the gravity of which weighed heavily on her shoulders. Desmond Carver leaned against the doorframe, his silhouette dark against the radiant backdrop, a presence that filled the space between them with an electric charge. He exuded a confidence that Laelani found both exhilarating and terrifying. Today, there was an edge in his voice, a tension that forced her to confront the avalanche of emotions she'd been suppressing. "Have you decided on the gallery's layout?" he asked, his voice smooth, yet laced with an urgency that reflected the storm brewing outside. The sky had darkened ominously, thick clouds rolling in to blot out the sun, mirroring Laelani's tumultuous thoughts. She turned to him, her heart racing as she attempted to steady her breath. I'm still considering the placement of the pieces. It's important that they speak to each other, you know? Like a conversation, she replied, her gaze flitting over the table, avoiding his piercing eyes that held secrets just below the surface. Or like two people who are too afraid to admit how they feel, he said softly, stepping closer, the warmth of his body almost tangible in the chilled air. "Laelani, you can't keep living in this half-life. It's suffocating." She felt a rush at his proximity, the air thickening with unspoken words. "And yet suffocating is precisely how my life feels," she breathed, her heart beating in sync with the growing thunder outside. "What do you suggest I do?" Desmond's brows furrowed slightly, his expression a concoction of resolve and vulnerability. "You have a choice. You can leave this all behind, your husband, this life built on shadows. You could be free. With me." The intimacy in his voice sent exhilarating shivers down her spine, igniting the very desire she had been trying to harness for so long. Laelani stepped hesitantly toward him, feeling the gravitational pull between them. "What if I don't want to leave?" "It's not just leaving, Laelani, it's choosing to live," he said, his eyes seizing hers with an intensity that made the world beyond her kitchen fade away. "Don't you see? You have so much more to offer than being a trophy in someone else's home." A gust of wind rattled the window panes, and she could almost feel the storm brewing outside competing with the hurricane in her heart. With one bold step, she was close enough to feel the heat radiating from his skin, the faint scent of his cologne mixing with the coffee, intoxicating her senses. "You speak of living, Desmond, But what about loyalty? What comes from abandoning one's vows? Her voice trembled, but only slightly, defiance coating her resolve. Desmond took a breath, his lips curving slightly, though shadows lurked beneath his smile. Loyalty is fragile when it's built upon betrayal and blindness. Think past the walls surrounding you. Nothing is ever what it seems, he murmured, closing the space between them, the air thick with tension and bittersweet yearning. With the storm outside rumbling menacingly and an inexplicable quietude enveloping them, with their faces hovered inches apart, their breaths mingled, an intoxicating dance of emotion so deep it scared her. Was she willing to risk everything for a chance at freedom, for a taste of passion she had long dreamed of? Desmond dipped his head, their lips nearly brushing. "Laelani," he breathed, the urgency unspoken but felt. Just as the first raindrops began tapping against the window, a sudden thunderclap sent a shiver down her spine. She could feel the weight of her decision pressing against her like the tempest outside. In that moment, she knew she was teetering on the edge of something monumental. The past and future colliding in an exhilarating and terrifying crescendo. Finally, they collided, lips brushing against skin, a promise hanging in the air without ever needing to be articulated. As raindrops cascaded down the glass, cloaking the world outside, she felt a tremor of hope. To move forward would mean stepping into the unknown, potentially shackled by the choices she was preparing to make. Drowning in his gaze, she whispered, "What if I can't?" He replied, pulse quickening, "Then we'll face it together. But don't forget, life will always find a way to open doors you never knew existed." Scene 49. Forbidden Temptations. The air in the dimly lit garage was thick with the smell of gasoline and the lingering hum of engine repair. Desmond Carver leaned against the sleek black sports car, its surface glimmering faintly under the overhead lights like an obsidian jewel caught in a well-polished nightmare. Shadows danced across his sharp features, amplifying the rebellious glint in his hazel eyes. He couldn't shake the feeling that, with each heartbeat, he was entwining deeper in Laelani Sinclair's life. A life marred by her husband's ruthless ambition and his own hidden agenda. His mind sharpened on the singular thought of her, his pulse quickening at the image of her stunning countenance reflecting vulnerability beneath her practiced grace. Laelani was evolving. Even her laughter seemed tinged with desperation as they walked the narrow path between danger and desire. In moments like this, the thrill of looming conflict blended with an intoxicating sense of connection that kept them both on edge. As if conjured by his thoughts, Laelani appeared, stepping into the garage with a hesitant elegance, her dark hair cascading over her shoulder like a waterfall of silk. The high contrast of her ice blue trousers and a fitted white blouse framed her silhouette, a stark reminder of the farce she was wrapped in, a life trapped in costly fabric and empty expectations. "Are you sure this is safe?" she asked, her voice light, but her wide eyes betrayed an unspoken fear. Desmond pushed himself off the car, stepping towards her with a measured pace, careful to maintain the distance that both reassured and tormented. "Safe? Nothing about this is safe, Laelani. You know that." He arched an eyebrow, a playful smile teasing the edges of his lips. "But what's life without a little reckless abandon?" Her gaze flickered to the ground, the weight of their situation pressing down like the tension in her shoulders. But when she looked back up, a fierce determination gleamed in her eyes. "Perhaps I've been reckless too long. I know the risks, Desmond. Your company could get us both killed. What's a little flirtation with death compared to the chance to feel alive?" he mused, his tone brash but playful. The air hummed with unspoken tensions, each word a step closer to her implosion. Laelani laughed lightly, but the sound felt trapped, muted by the turbulent emotions swirling between them. "You're impossible." She glanced around as though her surroundings might offer escape from both the conversation and the unfurling intimacy that knocked at her heart. And then, in a surprising moment of vulnerability, she spoke, her voice dipping below the surface of their flirtation. "I don't want to live in your shadows, Desmond. I've already lost so much." Her vulnerability cut through the energy, shifting the atmosphere from playful to perilous. He stepped closer, sensing the shift, captivated by her honesty. "You haven't lost everything yet, Laelani," he replied softly, the hard edge of his resolve softening. "You deserve more than the prison of your marriage." Just then, the chilling discord of screeching tires ricocheted through the air, followed by a raucous blare. Desmond recognized the sound, the unmistakable engine of Laelani's husband's goons racing in. His heart slammed against his chest, urgency surging through his veins. "We need to move," he urged, grabbing her hand, the heat of her skin igniting the raw chemistry that bridged their worlds. Their eyes locked, a moment stretching between them. In an unwritten language, they exchanged vows of longing and fear. Desmond tightened his grip, anchoring her against the dark tide of impending chaos. "Stay close." They ran into the shadows, footsteps echoing against the cold concrete like a thunderous applause to the unforeseen storm. Desmond's mind raced as he pulled her into a hidden alcove, holding Laelani against him. He could sense her quickened breath, the warmth radiating between them, punctuated by the cacophony of voices drawing near. "It'll be fine," he whispered, the sound barely escaping the tight enclosure, but it dripped with uncertainty, cloaked in masculinity. They pressed together, physical warmth warding off the chill of danger and indecision. Laelani's forehead brushed against his, her breath aligning with his in the cramped space. "I want more, Desmond, right now," she murmured, her voice like silk tugging at the edges of his resolve. "Then we fight for it," he replied, eyes fierce, the words sinking deep beyond the perilous moment. And just like that, the world outside lost its hold as the fires of ambition and desire melded, each instant taking them further into a tempest of longing and danger. Scene 50. A moment of reckoning. The rhythm of rain pelted the window like a persistent heartbeat, each drop a reminder of the storm brewing both outside and within the confines of Laelani Sinclair's lavish penthouse. The scent of sandalwood incense clung to the air, its smoky tendrils weaving through the warm amber glow of the room, obscuring the tension that settled like a heavy blanket over the space. Laelani stood by the window, her fingers tracing the raindrops as they streamed down, each rivulet resembling the tears she'd fought to contain. Desmond Carver moved quietly behind her, an ever-present shadow draped in tailored desperation. He was here for her, yet the distance felt like an insurmountable canyon separating them. "This weather feels like a blessing," he said, his voice low. "We can hide behind the storm." Laelani sensed his hopeful bravado beneath the weight of their shared silence, or drown in it. She turned to face him, her vulnerability barely masked by a flicker of humor, an attempt to shield herself from the truth. The storm outside mirrored the tumult of emotions that swirled within her. Desmond stepped closer, his intense gaze searching hers. "You don't really want to drown, do you?" Finding his unwavering focus unnerving, she turned back to the window. Rain had a way of revealing the world's softer edges, and today it softened the knots in her heart just enough for them to speak the truth they had both so desperately avoided. "I'm trapped, Desmond," she confessed, the words trembling on her lips like the delicate limbs of a wisteria caught in the wind. At that moment, the tension in the air thickened. Desmond edged near, eyes flickering with something akin to fear. "You know what he's capable of," he said softly, as if fearing the very words would summon horrors from the shadows. "You need to choose, him or us." For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to just the two of them, and she could feel a lingering hint of hope manifesting in the space between them. "What if I want both?" she whispered, heart beating wildly. "It's not possible, Laelani. You can't juggle a life with him and the passion that you crave." Desmond countered, his voice rising slightly as he gestured grandly, as if conjuring an image of their future somewhere lush with greenery and color, not haunted by darkness. "You need to face what you want, not what he wants." The mention of her husband made her flinch. It was a wound that had yet to heal, an ache that wouldn't relent. "He's my husband, Desmond," she said, her tone defensive, yet laced with a fragile edge of uncertainty. "And you're just my driver." The bitterness that dripped from her words resembled the rain now cascading in sheets outside. Desmond's expression, however, was resolute, anger and sorrow mingling like swirling eddies. "Just a driver? Laelani, I was never just a driver to you." In response, she stepped back, the distance between them widening, as if they were caught in a whirlpool of emotions, the current pulling them apart even as they desperately reached for one another. "Don't," she sighed. "Don't make this any harder than it needs to be." Desmond's fiery gaze softened as he leaned in, a whisper against the raging storm. If you don't challenge the darkness, Laelani, it swallows you whole. For a fleeting moment, the façade crumbled. She found herself standing in the eye of the storm, every heartbeat a reminder of her growing desires, clashing with her inhibitions, echoing the chaos outside. What happens if I face him? The air grew electric as he stepped even closer, their breaths mingling with the damp warmth that filled the room. Then face him, but alone, or with me beside you. That choice is yours. Tension crackled like lightning overhead, and with each passing moment, Laelani felt her resolve teetering. Suddenly, a loud crash of thunder echoed, rattling the glass. It snapped her back to reality with a jolt, the years of silence between them replaced by the urgency of the moment. She reached out, her fingers brushing his arm, igniting the air between them with unspoken promises. The room shimmered with the intensity of their unconfessed passion, their emotions swirling like a tempest. "Do you want me?" she asked, each word a question thrown into the storm, beseeching recognition. Desmond's eyes held hers, a truth dancing on his lips as he replied softly, "More than anything." But just as the promise hung between them, the ringing of her cell phone shattered the moment, pulling Laelani back towards a reality she longed to escape. With one last longing glance into Desmond's eyes, she knew their moment of reckoning was tantalized, close, yet irreversibly out of reach. "Answer it," Desmond urged softly, the warmth of his hand lingering in the air. The phone rang again, a dire summons that echoed beyond the walls of the penthouse. "We'll figure this out," he promised. She inhaled, her heart pounding, knowing that whatever came next would change everything. "We have to." Scene 51. Plans of escape. The dim light of the setting sun filtered through the heavy curtains of Laelani's studio, pooling golden hues over canvases that captured fragments of her turbulent mind. The smell of turpentine mingled with the rich aroma of brewed coffee, creating an oddly comforting scent in the air as Laelani sat at her cluttered table, the brush in her hand forgotten. Desmond, standing beside her, ran a hand through his tousled hair, looking every bit the enigma that had disrupted her meticulously ordered life. "You're sure about this?" Laelani's voice was barely a whisper, trembling on the edge of excitement and fear. Her heart raced not just from their clandestine plan, but also from the electric tension that filled the air around them. Desmond turned to her, his eyes deep pools of earnest respect. "We can make it work, Laelani. Just a few more nights, and we'll—" Uncharacteristically, silence enveloped the room, settling between them like dust in sunlight. Laelani could almost feel her heart pulsating, a steady reminder of the weight of their choices. She needed to break the quiet. It felt too heavy, too filled with unspoken possibilities. "What if he finds out?" she finally said, apprehension clouding her gaze. Her thoughts flickered to her husband, the imposing figure of Marcus, his world filled with shadows that threatened to swallow them whole. Desmond stepped closer, close enough to catch the faint blush of her skin under the warm light. "When we leave, he'll only see shadows, Laelani. You deserve to live in the light." His words hung in the air with the promise of freedom, igniting something deep within her. A distant laugh pulled their attention. It was Cade, Laelani's brother, who always seemed to appear at the wrong moment. He was arguing with Malik, the persistent friend who had insisted on accompanying them to the gala, even after Marcus's orders had come down thick. "You don't get to use my car, Cade. It's not a taxi service." Malik's voice was gruff, but held a note of teasing camaraderie that lightened the atmosphere. Desmond chuckled softly, his playful expression breaking Laelani's scrutiny. It felt like an echo of hope, a promise of laughter that had been stifled for too long in her life. "Tell them we're planning something more exciting than their petty squabbles." He grinned, that charming spark lighting his features. Laelani mimicked his smirk, the tension in her shoulders easing. "And what might that be? Planning our escape from the madness, or perhaps the world's worst road trip?" "Definitely an escape," he said, leaning in closer now, his breath warm against her ear. "We'll even pack snacks, can't eat bland sandwiches on the run." His playful tone slipped between them like silk, lacing their connection tighter. A knock interrupted them, and the door swung open, revealing Cade and Malik, looking both curious and concerned. "What are you plotting now?" Cade demanded, eyeing them suspiciously. Laelani cleared her throat, steeling herself. "Just some art planning. Art with a stash of snacks," Mullock exclaimed, grinning. I'm in. He flopped onto the couch with exaggerated humor. Who knew artisanal sandwiches were all it took to drag me into high culture? Desmond feigned indignation, crossing his arms. You have no idea about the gourmet life, Malik. You'd appreciate it if you just let yourself. The banter flowed easily, a refreshing balm to their overpowering anxiety. Cade raised an eyebrow at Desmond, the familial protectiveness shining through. Just keep her safe, man. Or else. His words hung in the air with unspoken threats, but his tone didn't betray his genuine offer of support. Always, Desmond replied, his confidence unwavering. His gaze met Laelani's, a silent understanding exchanged, as if promising to shield her from the storm that loomed. The laughter faded, giving way to the unshakable truth lying dormant beneath their façade of ease one, that both drew them closer and threatened to tear them apart at any moment. Laelani stepped forward, hesitating a moment to look deeper into Desmond's eyes. The warmth and determination there spoke volumes, revealing layers of desire she had fought to suppress. Please, let's think this through one more time, she breathed, her expression earnest. It's not just about escaping, it's about rebuilding ourselves. Then let's build something worth escaping for, he whispered, his voice firm, yet imbued with a vulnerability that pushed against her heart's defenses. Quiet settled back in, pregnant with possibility and tension, as the weight of their unspoken bond held them in place. The world outside spun madly, but in this moment, nestled among dreams and fears, a wicked thrill danced between them, one that promised both danger and freedom. Desmond lifted her hand, holding it with a gentle resolve. Together, we'll find our light, Laelani. And just like that, in the midst of laughter and vibrant dreams, hope blossomed anew amidst uncertainty, beckoning them toward an escape they never knew they craved. Scene 52. Against the tide. The air was thick with humidity as the evening sun dipped beneath the horizon, painting the sky in hues of burnt orange and deep magenta. Laelani Sinclair stood on the edge of the infinity pool, its water shimmering like liquid glass. She dipped her fingertips in, sensing the coolness contending against the warmth of her skin. Each ripple echoed the turmoil inside her heart. Desmond Carver approached, the soft pad of his footsteps barely disturbing the heavy silence that enveloped them. The tension crackled between them like static electricity, unspoken words dancing in the air. Mind if I join you? He asked, his voice deep and velvety, slipping through the silence and settling her nerves just a touch. She nodded, her heart racing as she stepped back, allowing him space. As he eased into the water, his body glided effortlessly, muscles taut and fluid, evoking an elegance that only heightened her desires. She couldn't help but admire him, caught amidst unsettling emotions and the wave of attraction that always swept through her when he was near. Around them, the sounds of the evening unfolded, a distant laughter from a gathering on the terrace, the soft chirping of crickets settling into their night routine, and the gentle lapping of water against the pool's edge. Laelani inhaled, catching a whiff of fragrant jasmine from the garden. It was the scent of her childhood, reminiscent of safety, of innocence, juxtaposed against the chaos that defined her present. Funny how we find solace in the smallest things, Desmond murmured, tilting his head toward a cluster of flowers growing nearby, vivid blooms defiant against the approaching night. Life has a way of surprising you, Laelani said softly, her gaze drifting from the flowers to his face, where shadows played across his features. It seems so mundane, yet it holds such weight. He raised an eyebrows, a flicker of understanding sparking in his eyes. Like this moment? Just the two of us sharing a quiet evening by the pool? Exactly, she replied, the corners of her lips twitching into a half-smile. It holds a weight of responsibility, dreams unspoken. But in the silence we find clarity. Their eyes locked, and in that moment Laelani felt herself drawn closer, the gravity of their shared secrets weaving an unbreakable bond. Clarity or confusion? Desmond asked, a teasing glint playing in his gaze, because I'm feeling like this unpredictable tide we're riding is pulling us toward it all. Right now, it feels more like a whirlpool, doesn't it? She replied with a light laugh, though the weight of their situation loomed just beneath the surface. Desmond stepped closer, the water creating soft, rippling waves around him. You're beautiful, you know that? The compliment hung in the air, heavy and sincere, a contrast to the tumultuous emotions swirling in Laelani's chest. "Is that where the clarity comes from?" she countered, a playful smirk growing on her face, fighting against her growing embarrassment. "From flattering words?" "Maybe it's part of it," he shrugged, his laughter rich and warm. But his gaze shifted, the atmosphere suddenly thickening, the playful energy forgettable against the reality looming before them. "But then again, what about when that beauty is tangled up in choices?" Laelani felt the air thicken. The laughter faltered. Choices, the kind that could shatter worlds, ignite an inferno, or save them both. "Desmond," she began, the weight of their circumstances settling in, her husband's empire bearing down on her like a hammer waiting to drop. Each moment spent with Desmond felt like a ticking clock, counting down to an unknown devastation. Before she could continue, Desmond reached up, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear, the warmth of his fingers igniting her skin. "You don't have to say anything." His touch lingered, an electric promise that spiraled through her, dissipating the ever-familiar tension of choice as desire washed over her like a tide. She stepped closer, the water lapping at her waist as their bodies inched toward one another, heartbeat racing as their breaths aligned. With a sighing breath, she whispered, "What if all we have is this moment? Then let's make it count," he murmured, and he closed the distance, capturing her lips with his own. The kiss was soft at first, a whisper of contact that stirred a fire deep within her. But as it deepened, it transformed into something ineffable, a promise of uncharted territories and an escape from the constraints surrounding them. The world around them faded, the laughter distant, the blossoms blending into a watercolor painting, the tide swirling at their feet as if the universe held its breath.